I think Luke Fickell is coaching for his job on Saturday, and I don't think he's the only one in the Big Ten who's in that situation. The Badgers play Oregon, coming off of another bad loss to Ohio State, which was coming off another bad loss. And there are all sorts of discussions, talking points. Badger fans, former Badger players are adamant that a change is needed and that it's administrative malpractice if the Badgers don't make a change at the head coaching position. And there was kind of almost a statement released by the Wisconsin athletic director that said, like, hey, shut up. Like, we believe in Luke Fickell, and we believe that he is going to be the guy to lead our program going forward, is kind of the gist of the message from the athletic department, which somewhat pales in comparison to the Florida State message of, hey, we're going to fire Mike Norvell at the end of the season. Just quit bitching about it until we get there, okay? Great. The Badgers have lost 5 in a row. They have been shut out their last 2 games. They've scored 10 points in the last 3 weeks. That's just where Wisconsin is. And I think part of that is, to his detriment, Luke Fickell took what made Wisconsin and had the identity of the Badgers. You knew that you were going to have somewhat large, nimble offensive linemen and great running backs and a good front seven defensively. And they don't have that anymore. But they play at Oregon on Saturday in a game that they are likely to lose going into the bye week. Now, I feel somewhat bad for Wisconsin because they're not losing to the Sisters of the Poor. Michigan is in the top 25. Iowa's 5-2, just on the outside of the top 25. Played Ohio State, the number 1 team in the country. Play the number 5 team in the country in Oregon this week. Then they play Washington, who should probably be ranked and isn't after the bye week. Then Indiana, who's a top 5 team. Then Illinois, who's ranked in the top 25. It has not been, by any stretch of the imagination, some backwoods couldn't find them on a map program. It just comes at a bad time. That it's about timing for Wisconsin, and it's bad timing for Wisconsin. You know who else has kind of had bad timing? And you know who else very well could be coaching for their job in a somewhat similar situation? I think Jonathan Smith at Michigan State has already found himself in that spot where Wisconsin has lost 5 in a row, Michigan State's lost 4 in a row, and Michigan State's 4 in a row are against on the road at UCLA, which isn't a bad loss by any stretch of the imagination. Like, you're on the road, UCLA is, or I beg your pardon, USC. You're on the road at USC, and you cross 3 time zones for a game that started at 11 o'clock Eastern on a Saturday night against a team who at the time was in the top 25. Lost to Nebraska, a team who before this past week was in the top 25. The UCLA loss, yes, is bad. that team fired their coach, and they kicked your ass. You were never competitive in the slightest. That is a problem. And then looked just kind of flat out lifeless against Indiana, where you got beat by identical scores back-to-back weeks, 38-13. One was against the number 2 team in the country, which you can probably like poo-poo away. It's like, okay, you got beat by the number 2 team in the country. The other 38-13, you lost at home on homecoming to a team that had fired their coach because they were so uncompetitive and poor. And that team beat the brakes off of you. And now Michigan State is home for Michigan. Talk about a must-win, where you've lost 4 in a row. You've given up 45, 38, 38, 38 in 3 straight weeks. 4 straight weeks, I beg your pardon. And now you play your biggest rival. Plus, Jonathan Smith's alma mater, the program where he came from, their head coaching position is open. I don't think it's a far-fetched conclusion to wonder if it's sort of a race for Michigan State to fire Jonathan Smith, or Jonathan Smith to say, hey, you know what? I don't think this is working out, actually. I think I might just go back home. Now, I think he wants to get fired because if you do, buyouts, as we've seen in recent weeks, are just contract clauses full of fat stacks of cash. And if somebody has to pay you money for you to not do your job anymore, that sure is a hell of a gig to get if you can get it. And he got it. But they're 3-4 this year. They are not making any discernible progress whatsoever. If anything, Aiden Childs, the quarterback, has played worse this year than he did last year. You've lost 4 in a row, given up 38 3 straight weeks in a row, and 45 the week before that. I think that James Franklin's firing changes a lot of things for a lot of programs, because their essential argument is if they can get rid of that guy and his buyout is $50 million, we can get rid of our guy. If they can get rid of a guy who coached their team in the semifinals of a college football playoff last year, and if their quarterback doesn't make a horrendous mistake at the end of the semifinals, there's a decent chance that they play in the national championship game. And hell, even a month ago, they had a lead in overtime against a top 5 team in the country. If Penn State can get rid of that guy, then everybody else can figure out how they get rid of their guy. Make no mistake about it. And I think that does change things, and I think it puts into perspective whether that's the correct perspective or not is a different discussion for a different day. But I think that it opens a lot of doors to people to go, oh, wait a second, why am I accepting flat-out mediocrity? Because Michigan State is not far removed from what they have seen that they are capable of. Mark D'Antoni had them in the college football playoffs, in the 4-team college football playoff. Mel Tucker had them beating Michigan when Michigan was on their rise. Kenneth Walker III had one of the greatest games you'll ever see in that game. But this is the type of game that I think can lead to the Michigan State game this weekend, is the type of game that I think could lead to either the beginning of the end or flat out the end of Jonathan Smith's tenure as the head coach of the Spartans, because you lose to your biggest rival at home, where let's say they get beat 38-7, 38-13, 38-17, where you're never competitive, your biggest rival kicks your ass on your home field to make it your 5th straight loss. Schools are a lot more apt now to just say, hey, you know what, this isn't working, and we'll send you on your way. I don't think Luke Fickell's the only coach coaching for his job this weekend. And I wouldn't have a ton of faith in Michigan State, one, pulling off a win over Michigan on Saturday, but then also they play at Minnesota the following week going into the bye. Feels like a pretty good time that if you wanted to make a decision, wanted to make a change at that position, that you're leading into the primo time to do just that. Don't be shocked if on Sunday afternoon we're back here on the Daily Huddle talking about how both Luke Fickell and Jonathan Smith are no longer the head coach of their programs. It's not far-fetched at all. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you get all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.